Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've had a magnificent weekend thus far. You will find my rank in the top left corner of the screen. Now, this is subject to change, and I will have the accurate one in the title, hopefully, depending on when I finish up recording, as this is being recorded during the Spurs game. However, hopefully remain inside the top 200k, and it will be a good game week as a result of a couple people, as you will see. I'll be going through my team, reviewing it, and assessing where my head's at with a few of the players. I'll be looking at my transfer plans, of course, and potential assets to bring in down the line, not just next game week, but a few after as well. And of course, the most important part of the video, which is the learning and observations, of which there are many, because there always are. Now, so many of you haven't subscribed who watch regularly, so if you could do that, I would be very appreciative. We did surpass 3,000 on Friday night, which was great, and now we will, of course, go for 4,000. Not much else needs to be said, however, so let's get into the video. Right, starting off with Sales, who got a 3-pointer, which is quite respectable away at Chelsea. Now, I haven't watched any of the game because the United one was on at 2 o'clock, and of course, I'm recording during the Spurs game. So in the learning and observations, there won't be anything about Spurs nor Chelsea because I haven't watched footage thus far. Now, in terms of Sales, really happy going forward. I think if you look at today, right, from what I heard, Forest were okay defensively. He's accumulating quite a decent volume of saves. They're not massive chances, though. They're just pretty decent ones. Like I said, I haven't watched today. It's just from a few things I've read. And if that trend is to continue, especially if this is the standard away at Chelsea, then in other games, he can certainly rack up clean sheets and maybe a few hauls here and there. So I'm very, very happy with him. The fixture run coming up is good. They're good for hauls as well. So absolutely no need to sell him. Probably still my preference, even if I was on a wildcard to select him. But aside from that, all good and nothing really negative to say. Right, now that we got the boring bit out of the way, let's move to the defense. And to be fair, that looks like a pretty boring set of scores. Consa 1. I was actually really fancying a Villa clean sheet in the first 10 minutes when I was watching the game. I was like, oh, this looks good for Consa. There's a lack of intensity. Man United don't look too threatening, and then he gets injured, right? So he potentially is someone I'm going to have to replace, and we will assess that in the transfer plan section. Vardio, I expected so much more. But you know what? When we come on to Fulham in the learning and observation section, we'll discuss how I was actually very impressed with them. So you know what? For all the games that are on the calendar, if he's to get a 1-pointer in this one, I don't think I can play too much, especially because I knew Rico Lewis, should he start, which I expect him to, was going to be playing the more attacking role, but I don't expect that to be the case at Wolves. And then Gabriel, Arsenal keep conceding these goals. To be honest, this wasn't even a stupid goal. This was very well taken by Camera. So I can't complain too much. He's got points for me when it matters. He's got points for me when he's been a differential. And with a lot of people having double defense, in terms of EO against engaged managers, again, not too bad. So whilst this defense did pretty awfully, outside of Trent, people didn't really get too many returns unless you're a Pickford owner, right? So yeah, Gavardio and Gabriel literally set to play every week. Lewis Hall could have easily been on my side. Had I just not got Guardiola, I could have even played him ahead of Konsa, but with Dominic Calvert-Lewin in my team, I wanted to maximize my upside. If he keeps getting a run of games, he's actually not that bad of an option. Brighton at home next week, where I could play him if Konsa is injured. So that's my thinking with him. Like I said, apart from Trent, really, none of the big boys or none of the high-owned defenders really did anything, so I can't complain too much. Bukayo Saka did it. We went on about captaincy a lot. We did it in solving the problems. We did it in the initial team selection. We did it in the preview, and all the way, pretty much all the way, we were on Saka captain, even with Jack on the Hubs video, and he delivered massively, right? We talked about three returns. We talked about him getting returns from being able to press infield a little bit more and dispossessing Southampton's players, given the way they play in their game model, and it all came to fruition. So it's very, very nice when a set of analysis like that pays off, and the swing is so big with a 14-point swing over Haaland, should I have captained him. So delighted with that, and absolutely carried my game week. As you will see, because you probably know my team, he is one of only 2 players to return. And for me to be on a fairly sizable green arrow when you only have 2 players returning, well, they have to do the business, right? And Havertz is great, getting 8 points, but still only 1 goal and 2 bonus. But yeah, it was really Saka who absolutely saved this game week, and I'm delighted that it was the call of the week which saved it. Salah, a bit quiet. Liverpool, they were good and they were in control. They just didn't look particularly ruthless. I can't really blame them, right? They played Wednesday night in the Champions League and then early kickoff on a Saturday. Pretty bad scheduling, and it's away at so etc. etc. When you have the game under control, it's okay. Eze really should have buried that to take that Trent clean sheet away, but you know, it happens. Very, very happy going forward. The menu, again, we're going to talk about in the learning and observations. Pretty similar to what I expected in terms of the trend. I wasn't too high on him this week. And Rodgers, he was involved quite a bit, but didn't get into the most threatening positions, and the final action really was lacking. So You know what? A 3-pointer in this week is like a haul for me, or at least a return. So yeah, I'm very happy with Rodgers going forward. Semenyo slightly less so, especially with the fixture runs coming up. But we will discuss that in the learning and observations. Right, now the third most useful player for my team actually scored 2 points because Haaland did blank. And you know what? Having watched the footage, the highlights, he didn't really actually have too much, if anything at all. There was one chance in the first half where he puts it across Leno. And I thought the technique on the shot was actually quite good, but it went past the far post. And aside from that, I thought Fulham did well to restrict City, and the change in personnel, dropping Smith Rowe and Sanderberg, which is something I spoke about on Twitter, was nice because it helped improve their pivot and I think just general overall defensive output. Calvert-Lewin could have scored that chance, which Nick Pope saved, could have had a penalty. To be honest, I actually don't think it was a penalty, so I don't feel particularly hard done by. He's definitely going to get quite a bit of airtime in the transfer plan section because there is one particular forward which I would really like to bring in as a replacement for him should he fail again. So we'll get that. And then Havertz, right? We talk about how with him, it's just a finishing thing. You see that goal, brilliant, so well taken. And if he keeps performing like this and has the finishing to go alongside, there's no reason I'd ever sell him, especially as he becomes more and more expensive. And a lot of people don't own him anyway. They'll have difficult routes to him. It will serve as quite a nice differential for a long period of time. He's good against the big teams as well, so don't worry about any difficult fixtures. I think Liverpool home, Newcastle away, Chelsea away is fine. I think the away fixtures for Arsenal are a little bit different, but he's really good at home, so I'm not too worried about Liverpool. And yeah, just delighted to own him, and I can't imagine the City are going anywhere quite soon. Bit of a random discussion. This wasn't preempted, but I might not wildcard in 12. I was looking at the fixture swing, and a big part of the fixture swing is Arsenal. I think people were looking at it initially as if you have to jump off Arsenal for Liverpool at home, Newcastle away, Chelsea away, but I don't think you do. I think I could keep all three of them. Chelsea have a fixture swing. Well, okay, I can just get Palmer. I can just get one defender. They're all pretty cheap, not very difficult. And then outside of that, okay, Wolves, will come on to that. But really, elsewhere is a huge fixture swings. Maybe Haaland is someone you want to go with out on Gameweek 12, right? I don't think I am going to as things stand, but should I wish to do that, right? I don't even mind just taking a couple hits and just taking him out and then spreading the cash elsewhere. Should I be able to roll if my team is strong down in a few weeks? And then I can just play it really late, like 16, 17, 18, 19, when people are looking to, well, when it's the Christmas schedule and people are really looking to expect minutes heavy players, I can just go with a relatively deep squad and have some very aggressive picks in there, even if expected minutes aren't up to scratch, because I know I'm getting a second wildcard soon. And the other thing is, I still think that wildcard 2 will be played around game week 30-ish, like similar to last season, to capitalize on the double game week. So at least I'm reducing the span, right, that I need that wildcard to last. So that's just something to think about. But now let's go on to the learning and observations. And again, thank you very much, Bukayo Saka. Right, there really is only one place for me to start on this channel in terms of the learning and observations, and that is Arsenal, and it is Bukayo Saka. Now, he's really interesting because he isn't going to generate 3 attacking returns a game, right? And I still do think that regardless of this, because this was the next fixture for it, right? His ceiling isn't going to be able to super competitive with the likes of Salah, and Cole Palmer, just because of how he's playing, how he's shackled to the touchline to an extent, how he's has to deal with so many 2-on-1 scenarios, how Palmer and Salah are slightly more goal orientated just in terms of their overall game, especially Palmer nowadays, right, playing in that central role. And so I do think it might be a little bit of a struggle. However, his flaw is, I just realized that I've made a mistake, and again, time conscious, so I'm just going, well, it should say super high flaw, not super high quality in the equation. His flaw is going to be very, very, very high because at the moment he is producing an astronomical amount of chances, and as a result, he is performing so well on the bonus point system. So if he is ever to just even get an assist, you can always count him in for one bonus pretty much, right? Okay, so that's a baseline of 5 with the assist, 1.6, and if they keep a clean sheet, 7. I honestly would be really surprised if he finishes pretty much any game under 6 or 7 points nowadays, right? That's how good he's looking. And then if he gets one more return, I think he'll bag all bonus, even if it is another assist. And he can, because he's a chance creation machine at the moment. He looks like a magician, and it's the volume of attacking actions. It's not just the quality. The volume of these creative actions in particular are great. So here, I think you're paying 10 million for a guaranteed floor pretty much. Arguably, for me, the best floor in the game right now with how he's playing and slight role adaptation or performance adaptation to the system. And as a result, I think he's worth the money. Now, I think I would probably pair him with one of Salah or Palmer. You can go both, but given the way their fixtures intertwine Salah and Palmer. I actually think it makes more sense to go Salah this time for the next 4 or 5 weeks, and then go Palmer afterwards, just to target the fixture on. Whereas Saka, I can see as being slightly more fixture-proof, just how Arsenal are playing and how dependent they are, especially on that right side in terms of creativity. But even in terms of the overall dynamic, so much more goes through that right side. That's been apparent through the entire season. So I think this guy would just be absolutely brilliant value for money, and I really don't expect him to ever drop below like 6 points a game. I would be very surprised if he blanks in a game. And the other thing is, obviously, he can still score goals, right? And he's got penalties. So you'll get a super high floor, and then you'll get occasional hauls as well. And just a very, very, very safe asset to have, set and forget, and you don't actually need to do much with him. Probably one of the only players at the moment, set and forget. Havertz, obviously, I spoke about it a little bit in the team review, but with this type of finishing, he's unstoppable because they generate so many chances for him compared to most sides. He makes so many good runs, right, that still don't get fanned, and they will do so at an increasing frequency as everyone starts to get on the same wavelength. And of course, the zonal domination that I spoke about, just because he's in and around so often, the ball will just fall to him. Whether that be through sequences which aren't so clean, right? Or maybe ones that are more so. Crosses from the right-hand side from Saka. Maybe even crosses from the left-hand side. Maybe Calafiori popping up and combining with him. So many reasons as to why the ball would drop there. And of course, he's such an aerial threat as well. So I think at the value you're getting and the fact he's very competent in big games, and he's certainly someone who I would say is like a big game slayer, a bit like João Pedro. You don't really need to sell him. Keep him, use him as a differential, especially whilst he's still relatively cheap for what he's doing, and just let it ride. So yeah, in terms of the Arsenal defense, I was always on Havertz over Raya. I think having Gabriel though is still great. You get that set piece threat, and you have cover of the best defense in the league. So I think those three are pretty much set and forget for as long as I can see for now, and then you just build around. Moving on to Haaland. Without Rodri, we saw City's speed of ball circulation decrease yet again, or at least it's at a lower level than it was with Rodri in the side for the obvious reason, given Rodri quality. We saw not having a pass-heavy De Bruyne behind him and just the general genius he is in terms of a creative effect, his ability to get chances. We saw Fulham do a good job using 2 physical centre-backs and a much stronger pivot that's far more dual-heavy than usual. Ensure that a lot of things into him just get blocked, and his routes to scoring are significantly reduced. So for all those reasons, when he has medium level fixtures against sides that set up right, it can be quite difficult for him, I think, without De Bruyne. Obviously, De Bruyne is coming back, and that'll be a big deal. So that is something I think, though, you need to keep in mind regardless, because De Bruyne isn't going to play every game. So predicting when De Bruyne does and doesn't play is a big deal. I really like Wolves away next week. I was at the Brentford game, and we'll speak about them in a little bit. They look poor, and I think Haaland's certainly the best person probably in the league to exploit them. But it's just something to keep in mind with Haaland. It's nice that the analysis panned out correctly, I guess. There was an instance in the first half where Adama just showed his level of physicality. Now, Adama is Adama, right? He's a completely different athlete to most people, even Rip Carl Walker at one point. But it does show you why in transition and in certain 1v1 scenarios, and where there is the need for physicality, Rico Lewis isn't the best option. You'd probably rather have Walker. And as I think he did bring Walker on partially for that reason as well, just to have a bit of extra cover in that defense, even if Traore was to rip him. And when you go away to Wolves and you have to deal with Cunha, who is an absolute monster, that's why I think Rico Lewis will be benched. And I did that analysis where I think he will and won't play, so just be prepared for that. But aside from that, with the positions he's popping up in the games where City require more small space players, he'll be fantastic. And I was just impressed by Fulham overall. I thought Jimenez put in a serious performance. Some of the quality of just the actions was just brilliant. Not to mention the assist, but I'm just talking about just in general. Adama showed you his transitional threat, and that's a big thing in the league now, especially against the top sides. I thought Iwobi played pretty well. Marcus Silva spoke about him as well. And Andreas is a very useful and industrious number 10 in this type of system. So number 8. It was like a hybrid 8/10, given what they were doing. So overall, I think Fulham could cause teams problems going forward. Defensively, still need to improve a little bit. Still a little bit too much space for me in and around the block. But apart from that, going forward, I think they'll undoubtedly score goals, and they won't be easy to keep clean sheets against, regardless of who you are. Right, as mentioned, this is being recorded after the Villa United game, and it was a bit of a snooze fest. It's probably the worst game I watched this season. I think it was very, very boring. I thought Jacob Ramsey missing was a big deal. You look at Philogene and the responsibility he was taking on the pitch, and it's far less than Jacob Ramsey, which is fair enough. They have different skill sets, and Ramsey I just think is a better player. But Ramsey is fairly associative. He'll combine well with Watkins and Rodgers just in general in terms of open play, and thus he'll have more of a willingness to take the ball and demand the ball in those small spaces, and then do something magnificent within that space and just generally, right? So not having him there means that you don't have that route and you just have to find a different solve. And when you have Bailey quite wide, you don't really have a creative in the middle, not to mention you don't have the space eating of an Arna. I thought Barkley was okay. I would have expected a little bit more. I think physically, he's just so far from an Arna. And I'm a big Ross Barkley fan, but physically so far from an Arna. That I don't think you can impose yourselves as much and block as high up the pitch, which means that can result in turnovers. And as a result, I thought the lack of Ramsey and Onana was a pretty big deal, and the reason for Villa's lack of creativity. You expect them to be back after the break, and as such, I think Villa will be back to their best. Rodgers was decent in terms of his overall involvement. Final action was pretty poor today, and that was just the case for the whole of Villa. Watkins is what I like to call magnetic. He just gets the ball a lot in really good positions because he's not channel running as much as before Emery came in, or at least early Emery days. And I think that's magnificent. I think he's going to do so well. I think even that type of game shows me that he's just going to rack up points. So many. He looks fit now. So he'll keep 90 minutes, I think, pretty much, even with John Duran knocking on the door. I think they'll play together as opposed to Watkins going off. And as a result, if you can shoehorn him into the side, I think magnificent. In terms of United, same old. I really dislike this pivot. This whole midfield makeup in general, it just lacks legs. It means that it's difficult to transition as a result, and it's not really dueling heavy outside of Kobe either, right? And just for example, you watch the game against Spurs and Ugarte doesn't cover the space very well. It means that the opposition players, specifically their more technical players, will get more time between the lines and in the pockets. And when you have those type of players in those instances, they're going to hurt you. Today they didn't, because Villa's, I'd say the makeup of their side is a little different. The way they play the system, and they were just a little bit off it today, right? But still, I think it's going to cause them problems down the line. And in terms of their attack, the attacking dynamics with the spaces between the line, and it's understandable why there are such big spaces given the makeup of athletes they have in that team. It's just really not working, this Ten Hag system. I don't think the system is that bad. I just don't think it suits this group of players. I think you need a far higher athletic level, or maybe even a higher technical level as well, but specifically athletic level. So with that in mind, I would just avoid them. I know the fixtures are pretty good. I actually think Garnacho could be a decent option if Diallo is stuck to the bench. But with all of them kind of rotating, Rashford coming off early, Bruno just not really being involved in a high volume of attacking actions and his general positioning, I would just avoid him and then see how they develop. If they develop into an option, then by all means, all over it. But until then, I think avoid. I was at the Brentford game, as mentioned. Wolves were really poor defensively. I thought in the middle they didn't block the space well enough. And it's not like Brentford, for example, had like a super technical player in those pockets either, right? You had Shada running beyond the last line, but you didn't have someone behind him to pick up that space. And if City do with their eights in there, I think they could cause Wolves a lot of problems, especially with Haaland running on. Both the fullbacks, when they got isolated, I thought did just defensive capacity overall is a little bit suspect, right? And then again, you put Savio and Doku up against them, I think they're in trouble. So I think Wolves could get a bit of a beating against City. Brentford were good. They could produce quite a lot of chances. And one thing I noticed in particular was the set piece threat was huge. There were a lot of set pieces in that game. And from every single one, from every single cross, it just looked like something was going to happen. And they obviously scored 2 goals from it as well, I believe. So that is something to know. If you want to go for a Pinnock, if you want to go for a Collins, I think with the fixture on, it's quite decent. Just don't expect them to keep too many clean sheets. I still have slight issues with their pivot, just in terms of their general performance and a variety of things, which we could get into, but probably unnecessary. As a result, I wouldn't expect to keep too many clean sheets, and it's one of the reasons I don't like Flecken. West Ham, I was talking about this opportunity a lot. Bowen in Game Week 7, Ipswich at home. And even though they've had a really poor start to the season, they have so much quality in that side. And Bowen and Kudus could have got so much more, right? So if they are starting to click, and especially they're going to play 2 defenses next against Spurs and United, who will both give you chances, I think these guys should be looked at, and they're not bad value options if you are looking to get out of an Eze, as an example. So that's definitely something to consider. Ipswich conceded quite a few, and I spoke about Ipswich and Leicester away from home and at home. At home, they're completely different. I think it's a much harder place to go. Away from home, however, when they do, I think they really are a team to target along with Southampton. I think a lot of the issues with Palace at the moment is actually to do with their manager. I don't think the system is really complementing the players. For example, I was looking at their pressing structure against Liverpool, and it just, for so many reasons, just my personal opinion, I wouldn't have gone with that approach, right? They're not really blocking the lanes for Van Dijk, and he's such a good passer of the ball. He's probably the best centre back in the world at doing that. So he was just punching him through, even bypassing Gravenberch at time for someone in between the lines to receive. And then Liverpool had numbers because they had bypassed the second wave of the press, and they were looking forward at the back line of Palace. Now, obviously, like quite a wide back line, it's a back five at times, depending on where the ball is and their setup, right? But that's just not where you want to be happening. Even when Gravenberch operating a single pivot at times, just because of how players were mapped out on the pitch, he was still very comfortable. And I thought they were aggressive, but you probably need to be more aggressive if you're going to do something like that. You have to commit a little bit more. And then when McAllister comes in to form a double pivot, it's just very difficult to press Liverpool's pivot, just general, right? And then you're not really looking to block lanes either because you're trying to go for one or the other. So for me, I think it's probably just better to sit off them, even when they double pivot gets the ball, because they just don't lose it too much. And they're quite versatile in terms of that. McAllister is very nimble and he can get around you pretty well. And of course, his passing quality and being able to receive is the most important thing. And then Gravenberch has really shown his qualities as an age, being able to drive out of those phases. So yeah, I think overall defensively, and that was just the pressing. Overall defensively, Palace really don't look good at the moment. And something needs to change there. Liverpool, I thought, was a very professional performance, considering the short turnaround, considering they didn't make too many chances. It was very industrious to an extent. Salah didn't have much, but I do want to talk about him and Jota because I think they could both be really good options. I like the Chelsea at home fixture. I think Chelsea concede enough chances, especially to good attacks, whereby these two can profit. Nunez just looks a bit out of favour at the moment, given the quality of performances. And I think with Jota, even if he gets like 70 up top at that price and the type of player he is so streaky, I think you've got a real good goal threat there, and someone with quite a high ceiling. Salah's obviously Salah, but then Arsenal away. My thinking is, okay, look, Calafiori had a pretty decent game, but I've seen him get done by Tyler Dibbling. I've seen him get done by Savio. I've seen him get done by Hakimi. And I'm just thinking, in an instance, can Salah do? And I think, yeah. So I think he could have some joy down that side. But that is, of course, the worst fixture. But then after that, Villa at home, Brighton at home, or like Southampton as well. All teams that use game models which are highly exploitable by a player like Salah. And especially when Palmer doesn't have good fixtures and people are really, really looking to transfer him in, you imagine even more transfers in for Palmer given that he got an assist and more out for Salah given he blanked. I think it's a really nice differential to have the Egyptian king. So that is something to note. Gordon will get points like, okay, yeah, sure, he missed a penalty. Okay, sure, he missed chances. But what I'm looking at is that he's actually getting the chances in the first place. Newcastle, they didn't play. It was a bit of a snooze fest as well, to be fair, that game. But they are starting to look a little bit more solid. And Isak's not returned. He should after the break. So for all those reasons, I think Gordon will get points. Bournemouth, Brighton at home in the next game, because it's a really nice fixture for him to exploit specifically. Everton, I really like the defensive options. If you want to go for a 5 million keeper, given the keepers aren't doing too well this year, okay, with that run, Pickford could be great. Mikalenko at 4-3, again, really, really solid. Then you've got the budget option, McNeil in midfield. Okay, I like that as well, just given his general involvement. Calvert-Lewin's becoming a bit of an issue, and we're going to speak about that in the transfer plan section, so I will speak about it there. We spoke about Bournemouth's performances away from home, given that on bigger pitches it'll be harder for their high press to succeed, and we spoke about Leicester at home just being better overall. The trend continued, the performances were suggestive of it as well, not just the result. So again, something to keep in mind when you are looking at fixtures. Don't just look at the FDR. Please try and go more in depth, because like I said, you're competing against so many people, such a competitive field. We really need to take every single edge we can get, and this certainly will be one of them, which people won't notice as such. Right, now this is the first game week of this entire season where I am actually quite stuck in terms of what to do, players I'd like, and my potential routes to them. I just have a lot of cash locked up in premiums because I have Saka, I have Haaland, and I have Salah, none of which I'd like to sell. I also have a 8-point-something million forward in Kai Havertz, who I have no intention of selling. And I have 2 very expensive defenders in the form of Gabriel and Guardiola, all of which I have no intention of selling. Now, it's nice because I'm more than happy to have another 4.5 defender. I'm happy to have Sells. I'm happy to have Rodgers. But that does mean that with the likes of Calvert-Lewin, who aren't firing, with the likes of Semenya, who I don't mind moving out, with the likes of Konsa potentially being injured, I do have some issues. Okay, I would love to sell Calvert-Lewin for Cunha. And if you follow me for a while on Twitter, you will know I love Cunha and I have for quite a while. With that run, with penalties, with just how good of a player he is and his general involvement, I saw him popping up like this deep right wing position yesterday. And I was like, hang on a second, you're playing left mid, mate. He's just so integral, and he's just so much better than his teammates with the utmost respect, right? That he will just get on the ball because he'll demand it and he'll float as such, and no one's really going to tell him no. So for all of those reasons, I really like him. But where am I to get the money from? Okay, because like I literally have no route. Because even if I am to downgrade Semenyo, who am I meant to downgrade him to get the funds out? Right. The only real route is Salah, but I don't want to sell him. I think what I'll do is I'll give him Chelsea, and if he flops and he looks poor, I think I'll sell him ahead of Arsenal, knowing that I could probably get a low score there. And then I would love to have him for Villa, Southampton, Brighton, but if I don't, so be it. And then I will look to get the likes of Brian Mbeumo and use that to fund the moves for Cunha. Mbeumo is just a brilliant asset with brilliant fixtures, and there is literally nothing bad to say about the guy. Great price as well for him. And I would love to own him. It's just so much a budget constriction as to the reasons for why I don't. Again, Salah is the one that really unlocks all of this cash and all of these moves. And actually, since transferring him in, I think I'm down like 10 to 12 points on that transfer over the last 3-4 weeks anyway. I transferred him in, 5? So yeah, over the last 3 weeks, but so 10 points and like 3.33 points a week. And that could be done in a single haul or a single like path. With regards to Calvert-Lewin, it's the fact that he's not accumulating too many chances. I would have expected a slightly higher volume, and the fact that, okay, he's not the greatest finisher, and that's what I was kind of hoping for, that the volume would offset that. They still have injuries. For example, there was no Branthwaite, there was no Mikalenko, and I think that all helped just in terms of everything, and one thing being his volume of chances he receives. If he blanks at Ipswich away, I don't know what to do at the moment, because the fixture run is so good, right? And he has such good fundamentals, but how persistent can I be after 4 blanks when Cunha's right there for only a little bit more? Okay, so that's really where my head's at. I think I give him Ipswich and then I reassess, and it's nice because Cunha has City, so at least I have some time to make that decision. I'm not really going to bring him in for that, right? Although he could score and get. Aït-Nouri, I think at 4-4, just brilliant. Do I expect Wolves to keep any clean sheets? Yeah, you know what? I think they can keep 1 or 2 in their great run, and he's going to get quite a few attacking returns. His general quality in the final third is brilliant, and as a result, especially given the trends I've spoken about, the lack of clean sheets and his price, I will somehow definitely have him. I would easily transfer him in for Consa this week, but he has City, so it doesn't really make too much sense, right, to bring in a defender against City. So maybe I end up rolling. That's what I'm actually leaning towards doing at the moment. Maybe just rolling and playing Semenyo because he's playing at home. And then the other thing is Cole Palmer, and I'm not looking to bring him in, right? I just don't want him. If I sell Salah, I will get Mbeumo. I'd rather have him over Cole Palmer and spread the crash elsewhere. And I'm looking to get Cole Palmer maybe in. I could get him in 9 if I really fancy the Newcastle and the Man United fixture, but I will not be getting him in 8 before he has Liverpool. I'm open to reassessing that. I'm open to just fading him till after Arsenal. But that's kind of where my head's at with all the prospective players, these 5 being the main. I felt like there was slightly less to discuss this week and slightly less interesting things to discuss this week. I'm sure by the time we get to Gameweek 8, though, looking ahead to that, there will be quite a few. It was more so just in terms of the reflections. However, that is the video, and that is all she wrote for today. If you could consider subscribing, that would be magnificent. Thank you so much as we push for 4,000. All your questions, all your comments, please do leave them below. I love reading them. There were also such a positive comment section at the moment, which I do genuinely really appreciate. Happy to answer every single question. And yeah, that's about it. Obviously, it's the international break now. I don't know when the next video will be. I know what it will be, but when I'll post it, I'm not entirely sure. There'll probably be a few days break, which makes sense. Have a wonderful week in the meantime, and I shall see you very soon. Goodbye. Now, for the sake of authenticity, I will leave the last cut in there. But if you did Captain Saka, just drop it in the comments and we can all celebrate together. Now, have a great week and goodbye.